Science fiction is a literary genre in which stories take place in a different reality. Although related with fantasy, this genre includes science-based facts. It combines the use of a futuristic setting, science, and technology. The three main traits are: the first one, the answer to the question, what if, or what would happen if? Second, it contains science impacts. And third, the setting is in a different universe than our current one. It normally takes place in the future, but could also play near the present or past. Some examples of science fiction books are I, Robot, The Time Machine, Ender's Game, or Brave New World. Now, we're going to talk about specific authors and how they use their war experiences to write their novels. The first author is Kurt Vonnegut. He used science fiction to characterize the world and the nature of existence as he experienced them. Vonnegut is greatly influenced by Second World War, and it appears often throughout his stories Mother Night and Slaughterhouse-Five, which are taking place in Germany. The second author is Norman Mailer. He was born in Long Branch, New Jersey. He studied at Harvard and joined the U.S. Army from 1994 to 1946. His writing style is described as new journalism. It combined the imagination of fiction and qualities of reporting. Mailer described his tour of duty as both the worst experience in his life and the most valuable. Our third author is Ernest Hemingway, born in Illinois. He participated in World War I as a voluntary ambulance unit wounded. In his work, he glorifies discipline, competence, and masculinity, and portrays war as a setting in which those qualities are constantly on display. His writing style is often described as coarse, crude, vulgar, and unsentimental style and manners. And last but not least, we have Joseph Heller. He was born on May 1st, 1923, Coney Island, New York. And in 1942, he joined the Army as a file clerk. He had wanted to be a gunner, but became a bombardier. All four authors participated or had something to do with World War II. Their writings were influenced by their experience at war and stick to reality, meaning their language and descriptions are very graphic. In their works, authority is criticized and the storyline follows a character at war. Kurt Vonnegut was born November 11, 1922 in Indianapolis, Indiana. His literature was affected by some events such as World War, depression, and family problems. He attended high school Shortridge and he discovered his passion for writing. He was part of the school newspaper. Later in his life, he attended Cornell University. He wanted to study journalism, but under his father's influence, he studied biochemistry, but was part of the university newspaper. He was part of a fraternity called Delta Upsilon. His studies were interrupted by the war, in which he took part. And later, when he returned to his studies on anthropology in the University of Chicago. In 1929, his family suffered the consequences of the Great Depression. He saw how his father had lost everything, including his architecture business. Due to the lack of income, his father took him out of private school and gave up on life. His mother became addicted to drugs and alcohol. Basically, his family situation is constantly reflected in Kurt's pessimistic idea about life. Besides taking part in the army, Kurt worked on being a publicist of General Electric of the Research Laboratory at New York. In 1950, he wrote his first story, Barnhouse Effect, and sold it to Collier magazine for $750. Also worked at Collier Saturday Evening Post with Cosmopolitan. In 1960, taught at University of Iowa while writing Slaughterhouse-Five. Kurt Vonnegut believed necessity was the mother of all inventions. Also for him, all stories were made based on the taxonomy of a story. Some of his popular books are Cat's Cradle, Slaughterhouse-Five, and Breakfast of Champions. One of the events that influenced Kurt Vonnegut's book was the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was an ideological conflict inside of Vietnam that involved the communist regime of North Vietnam and Viet Cong, who fought against South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. The war began in 1954. The United States had the largest foreign military presence and basically directed the war from 1965 to 1968. For this reason, in Vietnam today, it is known as the American War. In the United States and textbooks, the Vietnam War is viewed as a defense of democracy. In this perspective, North Korea's invasion is viewed as communist aggression. North Korea invaded South Korea and attempted to unify Korea under communist rule. The states sent troops to fight the war with the goal of preserving democracy. A movement against the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War was created. It began as a small piece of intellectuals active on college. But by 1965, it gained prominence after the United States began bombing Vietnam. There were marches and other protests, most of them organized by Students for a Democratic Society.